The world needs the next Iron Man.
A good Marvel movie provides us with the answers to questions like, is Quentin Beck really a good guy, or what is going on with Happy Hogan and Aunt May? But a great Marvel movie leaves us wanting more, and that's exactly how we feel about Spider-Man Far From Home. As we get ready to enter Phase 4 of Marvel movies, let's go over some of the biggest questions this movie left unanswered. Oh, and of course there will be spoilers, so watch at your own peril. Goodbye. Mysterio is one of those villains we've been waiting to show up in the MCU for quite some time now. In fact, we've been waiting to see Quentin Beck on the big screen ever since the first Sony Spider-Man movie all the way back in 2002, and it finally happened for us in a glorious movie featuring ultra-talented actor Jake Gyllenhaal. But is that it? Is Mysterio really gone already? It certainly seemed as though he passed away on that bridge during his final confrontation with Spider-Man. But could it possibly have been one last illusion? Maybe we're just in denial about one of Spider-Man's greatest nemesis coming and going in the blink of an eye just like that. But as we all know, Marvel Studios has given us the old not really gone switcheroo before. And what's going on with Steve Rogers? When we last saw him at the end of Avengers Endgame, he certainly wasn't looking his best, but he was definitely very much alive. He'd gone back in time to live out his life with Peggy Carter and ended up in the present day looking rather old. Yet he showed up in a memorial video alongside other heroes who had passed away, including Vision, Tony Stark, and Natasha Romanoff. Did he perish off screen at some point post-Endgame, or do most people just assume he didn't survive since there's a new Captain America now? Kree. The Kree are an alien race most Marvel fans are quite familiar with. We've seen them from time to time, including the infamously evil Kree fanatic Ronan the Accuser. The Kree have a mighty empire, but they made a powerful enemy in the movie Captain Marvel. We learned that the Kree were trying their darndest to eliminate the Skrulls, who were only looking for a safe place to call home. At the end of the movie, Carol Danvers said she was going to expose the lies of the Kree and force them to face up to their crimes. Those are some noble yet vague goals, and we do know whatever Carol was doing in space kept her quite busy for a couple of decades. But apparently the Kree are still around, because we heard Nick Fury mention the existence of Kree sleeper cells. What are the Kree up to, and who's at risk due to their continued existence? We know they have beef with the Skrulls, but they also decided Earth was a pretty good target as well during the movie Captain Marvel. It certainly seems as though they could be a part of Marvel's Phase 4, and perhaps run afoul of heroes other than Carol Danvers. Nick Fury. Speaking of aliens whose existence surprised us in Spider-Man Far From Home, we have the Skrulls, who we first met in Captain Marvel. These shape-shifting aliens can take on the form of anybody and match them down to the molecular level. Since establishing that these Skrulls are mostly good guys, we admit to letting our guard down and ceasing our endless stream of accusations about who's a secret Skrull, but apparently that's exactly what the Skrulls wanted, because it turns out Nick Fury and Maria Hill were really Skrulls the entire time. And they weren't just any old boring Skrulls, but Talos and his wife Soren. This reveal raised a ton of questions, namely, where the heck is the real Nick Fury? We saw him chilling out in space in front of a beach hologram, and the guy wasn't even wearing shoes. There's just something really strange about seeing casual vacation Nick Fury. What is he up to, and why did he have Skrulls impersonating him on Earth? He's clearly in cahoots with the Skrulls, but for what purpose? We have a feeling it wasn't just to go get some much-needed vacation time in outer space, though. Spider-Sense. Everyone knows Spider-Man has no shortage of amazing powers. He can spin a web any size, and he catches thieves just like flies. Look out! Because sometimes his powers just stop working, apparently. One of Peter's most remarkable and useful powers is also the least obvious one. Most of us know it as his spider sense, but you can call it the infantilizing Peter tingle if you want. Basically, it's kind of like a sixth sense that alerts him to danger and allows him to dodge projectiles, anticipate incoming blows, and generally avoid getting crushed into a fine paste. During Avengers Infinity War, we saw him use this ability to get a heads up about an alien warship approaching New York City. See, it's pretty useful. But in Spider-Man Far From Home, this ability just completely stopped working. Peter couldn't even stop a flying banana, let alone a speeding train. But why? Was it just because Peter didn't want to use his ability and was actively blocking it, or did his reluctance to be a hero mean he actually could not use it? We know it's a pretty vague power and that it isn't quite as flashy as a pair of web shooters, but we could have used a better explanation of why it suddenly stopped working and then started back up again. Stark employees. We all know that as much as we love Tony Stark, he wasn't exactly everyone's cup of tea, to put it mildly. Yeah, he saved the world multiple times, but he also lived his life in a way that earned him more than his fair share of enemies. He managed to alienate no shortage of his own employees, and this came back to haunt his pal Peter Parker in Spider-Man Far From Home. We learned Quentin Beck had once been an employee of Stark Industries before being unceremoniously fired by Tony himself. There were also other surprise ex-Stark Industry employees to be seen during the movie, including William Gingerriva from way back in the first Iron Man movie. He was the guy Obadiah Stane bullied into making him his Ironmonger suit, and presumably the same one who leaked the incriminating footage of Peter at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. While Quentin Beck was stopped, William and the other former Stark Industries employees are all still alive, as far as we know. With their leader gone, are they going to disband, or will they continue to strike out against the world and Tony's successor in particular? They might not be quite as charismatic as Quentin, but they still have the brains and resources to do some serious damage. The Law. We know that not everything that happens in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is 100% realistic, but it does combine some great fictional elements with real-world scenarios. In Captain America Civil War, we saw our heroes engaged in a heated disagreement over the Sokovia Accords. And by a heated disagreement, we mean they pummeled the snot out of each other. But what happened to the Accords following the decimation? Steve Rogers went from being a fugitive to openly hosting a support group, and Natasha made herself comfortable in the Avengers headquarters. So what's the state of superhero legislation in the current-day MCU? Not only is this a question we want to know the answer to, but it seems especially pertinent considering the mid-credit scene of Spider-Man Far From Home. Peter Parker's secret identity has now been exposed, and he's been accused of some seriously heinous crimes. Even if his name is cleared in the attack on London, could he be liable for his past superhero exploits? We've seen heroes like Clint Barton and Scott Lang end up on house arrest for undertaking acts of heroism without proper government approval. So what's going to happen to Peter? Multiverse. By now, we should all know not to trust Marvel movie trailers. Seriously, Marvel has absolutely perfected misleading movie trailers and gotten it down to an art form at this point. Many exciting moments from the trailer didn't make it into the final version of Spider-Man Far From Home, including Peter Parker picking up his passport. But one thing from the trailers that got us excited was Peter declaring that the multiverse is now a thing in the MCU. We were totally thrilled this made it into the movie, and we heard Quentin Beck confirm the Prime MCU timeline is known as 616, which is a reference to the comic books. But later on, we learned Quentin and his accomplices were from Earth 616 and had managed to fake arriving from another universe. This was something many of us predicted, but what does it mean regarding the multiverse? Just because Quentin didn't come from another timeline doesn't mean one doesn't exist. But we didn't see any proof of them in the movie. The one bit of proof we seem to have turned out to be fake, and we're left wondering what this means for the state of the MCU. Flash. Eugene Flash Thompson may be one of the biggest Spider-Man fans around, but he sure has it out for his humble classmate Peter Parker. He was a thorn in Peter's side in Spider-Man Homecoming and was no less irritating in Spider-Man Far From Home. Seriously, does anybody really like watching live streams of someone else's vacation? Apparently, Flash got dusted and revived, which means Peter is stuck with him in his class, at least for now. But near the end of the movie, there was a moment that made us wonder if Flash could soon have a bigger role to play. When Flash gets picked up from the airport, he seems disappointed, but not entirely surprised that his mother didn't make it to pick him up. Although we haven't seen Mrs. Thompson in the MCU yet, we know in the comic books that she's not exactly a warm and fuzzy kind of person. And neither is her husband. Flash's parents shape his personality and actions in a big way, and we wonder if this could come into play in the MCU as well. Maybe this moment was a hint that Flash will eventually have a larger role in the MCU as we move into Phase 4. In the comic books, he eventually becomes a new Venom and joins the secret Avengers at one point. Sinister Six. Earlier, we mentioned that we'd been wanting to see Mysterio on the big screen for quite some time now, and that's absolutely true, but you know that us comic book fans just can't be satisfied until Spider-Man's entire extensive rogues gallery gets their time to shine. Going into Far From Home, many believe that we'd eventually see the formation of the Sinister Six, a notorious group of Spider-Man's enemies. Although Dr. Octopus was responsible for bringing the initial group of villains together, Mysterio was one of the original members. Adrian Toomes was another original member of the Sinister Six, and we saw him during Spider-Man Homecoming. But with Mysterio defeated, what does this mean for the Sinister Six? Are we really never going to see them in the MCU? Or will they be incorporated into the universe with a different starting lineup than in the comic books? After all, there have been many different members over the years, and the group has been expanded to 7 and even 12 members on occasion. Even the Avengers didn't start out with the exact same lineup in the MCU as they did in the comic books. Originally, the Avengers were Ant-Man, the Wasp, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, and Thor. Heroes. One of the great things about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the potential for crossovers. We all know Tony Stark loved showing up in other franchises, and it was always awesome to see heroes helping each other out. But with that in mind, it was kinda surprising that nobody showed up to deal with the situation in Europe except for Peter Parker. We understand the universe is a much bigger place than just planet Earth, and there are some heroes who specialize in extraterrestrial shenanigans, like Captain Marvel, Thor, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it did seem really odd that none of the other Earthbound heroes were involved in Far From Home. The roster is a bit sparse at the moment, but there are still several known and well-established heroes left. There's Ant-Man, the Wasp, Professor Hulk, Scarlet Witch, the Black Panther, War Machine, Bucky Barnes, Doctor Strange, and the new Captain America. So where were all of these guys during the whole movie? Nick Fury named a couple of heroes and said that they were indisposed, but what about everybody else? Quentin Beck convinced them that the future of the world was at stake. So why not call in the pros instead of a reluctant high schooler? Well, what do you think about these lingering questions after Far From Home? Do you think we'll ever get the answers to them? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.